mind is such a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
and like I really do believe that the mind only knows two things, right? The pictures you draw for it and the words that you tell it. And it doesn't know if you're trying to kid it or you're trying to work around or it's insecurity. And that's that. And so I think we have to be very careful with the pictures we tell ourselves or pictures we draw for ourselves in our minds and the words that we tell ourselves. One reason why I never, ever, ever talk about running is being painful or suffering in agony, because if I talk about public speaking as being, the worst thing ever, do you really think that's setting the stage for you to go out and get better at public speaking?
Hello, folks, and welcome to the Real to Heal podcast. I am your host, Nicolette Richet, and on today's show, we have an incredible guest. I know I say that about all our guests, but they truly are magnificent because of the fact that every single person has a very unique story. And once you get into their history, what they've done, what they're doing, and their dreams for the future, that's when you truly see how remarkable everybody is. But Dave Proctor is even slightly more remarkable and more unique, I would say, than most, because he's fantastic like everybody else is, but then he just takes it an entire step further, or I should say thousands of steps further, because Dave is an ultra endurance athlete like no other. So this episode is truly superb. He is currently the race director of Canada's Outrun Rare backyard event. He finished third at Bigs last year. He holds a Canadian 24-hour road running record of 257.093 kilometers. That is incredible. That's in one go, 257 kilometers in one go. Set on a looped road course in Turin, Italy. And he set that record back in 2015. Now, Dave also holds the 72-hour record which is 500 kilometers that he ran in 72 hours, the 12-hour treadmill record of 153 kilometers, and the fastest 100-mile treadmill record of 12 hours and 32 minutes and 26 seconds. So this means this guy is a machine. He can go, 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 go. Now, he has quite a few 100-milers under his belt, which is no small feat at all, including running 170-kilometer to the start of a 100-miler the day before the race. And then he managed to take the win the next day. So this guy has done it all. Now, what I love most about Dave is, it's great that he's run all of these races. He's broken Guinness World Records. He has done a lot in the endurance space. But what I love about this particular athlete is that Dave Proctor has decided to use his skill set for the better and for helping build an organization that he started called Outrun Rare, when he recognized that Canada was the only country in the world that did not have a rare disease strategy. So one of the things he wanted to do to raise awareness for rare diseases in Canada was to run 7,200 kilometers across Canada in 66 days to bring awareness about rare diseases, and also to help support his son, who also had a rare disease that took over 6 years to get diagnosed. So we're going to go through what that was like to be a father of a child with a rare disease, working in the medical system, and how he came to ultimately train for and do this race across Canada. So stay tuned for that podcast, because it is truly a heartwarming podcast. You're going to learn so much about rare diseases, and think about rare diseases in a way that you've never thought about them before. Now, before we dive into the podcast, we are going to dive into my own personal feat that I'm going to be doing next year, where I'll be attempting to run and cycle across Canada in 75 days, stopping along the way to work with Indigenous communities and communities of people of color, working with physicians groups, and working with youth as well. And this is part of my PhD dissertation research. I'll be making a documentary along the way that I get to submit as a requirement for my PhD. And that documentary is all about storytelling. It's how do we tell the story of what it means to work alongside Indigenous communities and to help Indigenous members remember that food is medicine, and then to also uncover the existing barriers that exist in these communities, barriers to eating well, barriers to understanding that food is medicine, the barriers to remembering that food is medicine, because of the fact that in Indigenous communities all over the world, Indigenous, First Nations, Aboriginal communities, communities of people of color, so that's African American, Canadian, African individuals, doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in Australia with the Aboriginals, Maori, the Maori in New Zealand, um, these people have been displaced from their communities and really have undergone 500 years of oppression as a result of settlers coming in and taking over the lands and then pushing people off their lands and away from the food systems that they knew, their sustainable food systems. So that meant growing food, hunting for food, traveling in search of food. And then by removing individuals from their lands, then forcing them into residential communities, stripping their children away from them, breaking their hearts, forcing them into a lifestyle that was so foreign to them based on refined processed food, based on so much trauma and abuse. Well, it is no wonder that this trauma has carried down through the generations. And it's not just a simple matter of saying, well, get over it. We hear that from individuals that don't know the history of Indigenous members. And it's not something you just get over, because this trauma is woven in to and woven throughout every grain of sand that we walk on. It's woven into every bit of fabric that touches your skin, that builds up our homes and our cities and communities. And that history and that trauma is so embedded that it's not something you just get over. So we are in a place where it is so important that we do embrace anti-racism, and where we indulge in learning about the history of all peoples on the planet, and we start learning about what it meant to live sustainably on the planet. But we first have really important questions that we need to ask. And those questions are about the social determinants of health and the barriers to being able to access the knowledge that we need to be able to understand the systems that need to be in place that will promote health as opposed to further taking away from health. So if you're not asking those questions, it's never too late to start asking those questions and to start understanding what it means to be Indigenous. And one definition that I love, I talk about it all the time in our podcast, is to be Indigenous to any land doesn't necessarily even mean that you need to be born there. But what it means is that you need to be looking 7 generations in advance into the future and asking, what do I need to do today to make sure that in 7 generations from now, our children and their children and their children's children are going to be healthy. The planet is going to be healthy. The air is going to be clean. The soil will be regenerated. We'll be able to grow clean, real food for everyone, not just for ourselves, but really where there'll be no child, no human, no animal that is left undernourished, that is left diseased because they don't get nutrients, that is traumatized, that where, we aren't raping and pillaging from the land and the air and the soil and the water anymore, but instead we're working to regenerate those systems, and we're working to heal the planet, heal the people, heal the animals, heal every single bug, stone, piece of wood, metal, anything. It doesn't matter whether it's living or non-living. It's that everything is harmonious and lives together as the one complete system that it always has been and always will be. So that is what it means to be Indigenous, and we can all truly make a stance and make a move towards embracing that as a way of being, a way of living today onwards. So my 7,120 kilometer bike and cycle across Canada. Everybody can go to our website at richerhealth.ca, at thegreenmustache.com, at our Nutrition and Detox Wellness Center site, as well as my website, nicolettericher.com. And you can sign up to learn about all the training that I'm doing, where, you know, I got up off my chair from sitting behind my desk, and how I learned how to become an endurance athlete, which is something I'm not there yet. I'm still in training, but over the next 9 months, before I take my first step from Victoria, British Columbia, and start heading across Canada to St. John's, Newfoundland, you can follow my training. And in fact, you can do the training with me. Another reason you want to be part of this training is because we're going to be collecting data along the way. So if you are a woman particularly who is between the ages of 35 to 65, and you want to transition into being an endurance athlete, and you want to make the transition into moving your body more, switching your diet over, we want to be able to document your journey through that as well and collect data along the way. So if you're willing to go get blood tests, if you're willing to go get lab work done, we want to follow your journey just as we're going to be following my journey as well. So head over to richerhealth.ca, sign up for our training group, go to Facebook, and definitely sign up to be part of our 22 million strong training tribe. Okay, all the links are down below. So without further ado, let's jump into this podcast with Dave Proctor and his amazingness. And of course, you know what to do. If you love this podcast, share it with your friends and family so that they can learn alongside you as well. See you at the end. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Eat Real to Heal podcast. On today's show, I have a very special guest, Dave Proctor. Welcome, Dave, to our podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So it is a pleasure having you on our show for, so many different reasons. Number one, we've never had anybody on the show to really dive into rare diseases and the whole conversation around that. Just before we started recording here, we had probably a show-worthy talk on, so hopefully we'll go back and cover some of those things. Another reason is because Dave has created an amazing organization called the Outrun Rare organization. And, this business is incredible. I'm going to let Dave talk about that in a second. And also just how he went about raising awareness for rare diseases. So we're going to be talking about all of those things and so much more. So Dave, what I want to do is just go back to how this all began. So what were you doing before you started your company?
I was a father. I've got 3 kids, and in present day, my oldest her name's Julia. She's 14 years old. Sam, who has the rare disease, he's 11, and my youngest is Adele, and she's 9. And so I was busy as a father of 3. I'm a massage therapist in downtown Calgary. And when I'm not doing those 2 things, I'm an ultra marathoner. And so over the last number of years, I like to run further distances. Ultra marathons are anything further than a marathon. So a marathon is 42.2 kilometers. And so ultra marathons are anything further than that. But my wheelhouse is really, a lot further than that. So multi-day, multi-week running. Over the last many years, I've gotten stronger and stronger in my craft of ultra marathoning. And I've set the Canadian 24 and 48 and 72-hour records. And a number of world running records as well too. And I was really having fun, building my fitness, working on all the mental aspects when it comes to endurance racing. There's so many mental aspects and fueling aspects and recovery aspects, and it's so much more than just being fit, right? It's putting everything together on the day. And it really gave me an outlet. from, from my life as well too, especially as a father with a child with a rare disease. My mother, even to this day, says, Dave, you started running a lot more when Sam got sick, and when there was more of a significant hurdle, you would just go and run more, and that was your coping mechanism. So, and I can't disagree with that. Throughout this whole process, I remember breaking the Canadian 24-hour record in 2015 in Torino, Italy, by running 257 point something kilometers in one day. And immediately upon getting home, I called my friend Blaine Penny. And Blaine Penny is a very good friend of mine, but he also has a child with a rare disease. And it's another rare disease called mitochondrial disease. Mm-hmm. And, not all humans are created equal. There are the people that kind of live in co-pilot. And then there are those who actually go out and take life by the reins. And Blaine is one of those people. Now, Blaine ended up, when his son was sick with mitochondrial disease, instead of pouting and complaining and whining about that, he went out and realized that there was no organization in Canada that raises funds and awareness for mitochondrial disease. So he and his wife started one, and it's called Mito Canada. So I went to Blaine upon getting home from the from Italy, and I said, Blaine, I think I could break the Guinness World Record for the furthest distance run on a treadmill in 24 hours. And I want to do that with Mito Canada. And I think we could raise a lot of money and awareness. And he was like, sure, yeah. So we ended up constructing an event that we did this into 2016, where I ended up running and breaking the Guinness World Record for the, I think it was 260.4 kilometers on a treadmill. And treadmills are tough because it's a mental cage that is tough to get over. And we did this at the Calgary Marathon Race Expo, and there were a lot of people around. And I won't get into the nitty gritty of how difficult that was or what that looked like, but it was not easy. Upon finishing, of course, number one, you want to eat your body's worth of food, and then immediately you want to sleep for 3 days. And after I got up from my sleep, I remember having a glass of wine with my wife on our patio. And during that run, during the treadmill run, I had this idea that there is this Canadian running record that it's elusive, and it could be the hardest running record in the world, and it's the Trans-Canadian Speed Record. So Al Howie, back in 1991, ended up running across the country in 72 days and 10 hours. And not a lot of people know that. We know the Steve Fognos and the Terry Fox and the Rick Hansons. But yeah, so Al Howie is a beast. That's a tough record. There's 100 kilometers a day for 72 days in a row, no days off. And I told Sharon, I said, yeah, I think my running is elevated to a point that doesn't scare me anymore. In fact, it really intrigues me. But what intrigues me more is the Terry Fox story. Mm-hmm. And there's that saying that Terry Fox, it's not how far Terry Fox got, it's how far he got us. And over the last number of years, I have grown very frustrated and at times upset with the Canadian medical system when it comes to how they approach rare disease. And, over the last number of years, my son got sick first when he was 13 months old with his rare disease.
So let's just go there for a little bit, because I think a lot of people who, I don't want them to get so excited about your running stories, which I'm very excited about.
Absolutely.
And definitely, Al Howie, I remember reading about him and thinking how that is incredible, because I'm trying to do 100 kilometers a day running and cycling for 75 days in a row, mm-hmm. but I'm not trying to break any world records. It's literally just to mobilize me across Canada and raise awareness. But so you have so many exciting running stories I want to do a whole podcast with you just on that. But let's take people back, because a lot of individuals out there might still be in a place where they have a young child and they are going through the medical system and their child does have something going on with them, but they don't know how to navigate the medical system. And
Right.
that's what happened with you, because it took you a long time for your son to get diagnosed, correct?
Absolutely. And it
So
took it.
how did all that start?
So it all started when Sam was first 13 months old. And he was a perfectly happy, healthy little boy who was, like most 13-year-olds, learning to walk and falling every 5 steps. And yeah, and he ended up getting sick one day with what we thought was just a regular virus, and he had a fever. So we were okay. Let's throw on the cartoons and do some cuddling. And we noticed quite quickly, within 4 to 6 hours, that he was very, very lethargic. And he tried to get up to go do something, and he looked like a baby colt when they were first born, and very wobbly, and the knees wobbled, and the elbows, and then and the neck, and fell down. You're like, whoa, 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 what is that? We ended up at the Children's Hospital in Calgary, and upon getting there, when we got there, he was completely flaccid. It was flaccid paralysis. There was nothing. They put him on a bunch of life-saving machines, because we just don't know if this is progressing, if like what is this? And they gave him immunoglobulin, which is given to people who when their immune system's not fighting strong enough, and it helps you fight. And so in case this was a virus that was killing him, this would help. He started getting better within the day, and he was able to then start turning his head and moving his eyes again, and we stayed in the hospital for about 3 weeks, and he was getting a little bit better and a little bit better, and the doctors said, we don't know. They ran all the tests, but we don't know. We don't know what to do. Most likely, this was just a virus that attacked his cerebellum, which causes which is it's the part of the brain that makes you balanced and coordinated. So ataxia. And he'll probably be a 15-year-old kid, and you'll be like, oh yeah, remember that time when he was 1 year old and this happened. So here's hoping. We went home, and he was getting better and better week to week, and he I would say he was walking and moving like a regular 1-year-old child. But then when he was 25 months old, so just after his second birthday, it happened again. And he got a fever, and he started with this ataxia pretty bad, pretty quick. So we, again, Children's Hospital, and this time we talked to all the same doctors and nurses, and they said, okay, this is a relapsing condition. We don't know, but we're going to make a really good concerted effort of trying to find out what that was. From that point forward, that was the next 6 years of our life. It seemed like we completed the Canadian healthcare system of what was available to us. We were fighting for genetics, but genetics was really hard to get at that point. We knew that the answers were in genetics, but we were also not in a financial position, my family, to go out and shell out the $30,000 to $40,000 at that time for genetic work.
Now, though, is it like it now, though, genetic testing is actually quite inexpensive?
We're working with a group in Calgary that's $800, and it takes 6 business days to get back. And the fact that our Alberta government isn't really supporting that, it is frustrating, because that's a part of the genetic framework that we'll get to later, of course. But really, it took us 6 years to get our diagnosis, and so our diagnosis came back with our geneticist, wonderful man, Dr. Guinness, and he said that there's a significant mutation found on a gene called ATP1A3, and it's called relapsing encephalopathy with cerebellar ataxia. He was only the sixth diagnosed in the world with it. It's very rare, very new. The way that genetics are working globally, we're understanding new rare diseases all the time. And so, that started our forward progress with navigating this disease, which really we still don't know a lot about. There are very few tests and studies done. They're doing more and more tests and studies on more frequented rare diseases now, and they're making their way down to the less frequent ones. And RECA, we would rather call it RECA instead of relapsing encephalopathy with cerebral ataxia, is it's very, very rare. And so going through this entire process, we were frustrated because we were realizing, wow, okay, maybe this took us 6 years, which the average rare disease diagnosis in Canada takes 5 years.
Wow.
Only because we're the only developed country in the world without a rare disease strategy.
At that time, we're one of the only countries in the world without a rare disease strategy.
Yeah.
Still in 2020.
Absolutely.
And so I just want to go back there. While these 6 years were going by, were you in and out with the doctors? How were you navigating that over the doctors? After the second time, did they have a plan for you, or was it kind of like, let's just wait and see?
It was a lot of let's just wait and see. We were advocating as hard as we could. In the best ways. I've always thought, don't ever call a doctor a name. They're not going to be, and they're trying their best within the system that they have. And, bring in cookies, stop at the bakery and bring in cheese buns, and say thank you. But over and over and over again. So we were going through all the tests. We were seeing all the geneticists, all of the neurologists, because we didn't really even know where this originated from. We were getting a lot of support from, the Alberta government through PUF funding and on and so forth. So we were getting physiotherapy, OT, but, it was a bit of a moving target because we really didn't know what we were dealing with. So, while our physiotherapist was getting us to do strength exercises, there are a number of diseases out there. The more that you do, the worse you get.
Exactly.
So we had to kind of play this by ear, and we had to become a bit, the experts when it came to noticing his changes here and there, and I think my wife and I did a really good job of that, of navigating something that really is not at all understood. There's no best practices, and so we were supported in ways of Band-Aid solutions. And so I overall, we just got frustrated. And, within that 6 years, we now call it the diagnostic odyssey. And sorry, that we don't call it that. That was told to us by a friend of ours and he eloquently put it, and he said, you're just looking and you're searching, but you feel like you're in the middle of an abyss, and you so desperately want to support those who you love around you, your child, but yet, here you are, trying to empower, trying to support, and and my wife and I can navigate that system, but what about other families that can't?
Well, that's one question that I have, because, with you being an RMT, you're trained to, examine the body and, and to the point of, diagnosing, right? Like, if I don't know if you can use that term as a RMT, so diagnose and then to treat. And so here you are in a system where, you have a child and it's your child, and thank goodness you have that skill set. But what about families that don't have the wherewithal to know that they can advocate, they can question, they can research, they can do all of those things, and they just sit back and they're just waiting for somebody else to do it for them?
Right, absolutely. And and as well too, what we really had going for us was that Sam, all along, wasn't really overly complex. Like his rare disease wasn't overly complex. I know far too many families with kids with rare diseases that they've had to attend a funeral. And I couldn't imagine really, what it would be like to live within this system where the system isn't really developed to support us where it needs to be. And then at that same time, your child's in dire condition, in the hospital, on life support, going in for numerous surgeries where it's just, again, band-aid solutions. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of hopelessness that takes place within all of that. You know, we found ourselves very lucky, as much as at times I'm sure we thought, oh, woe is us. Um, you know, no, it could always be worse. And you know, I think we all need to act in a way of service, and who can we support, who has it worse
Exactly.
than us, um, and how can we better support them. Yeah.
Yeah, I just well, I spoke at an event in Kansas for the Who is Carter Foundation, and that was a family that their 6-day-old had contracted a very rare virus, and basically the Carter had ended up having went from super healthy baby to 60% global brain damage,
Mm.
and they said, oh, he'll never live, and let's take him off life support, and and he ended up living, but their whole story was quite remarkable, because similar to yours, I mean, you don't know what you're dealing with. You don't know if it's rare but manageable, rare but it's going to end with a funeral in a few weeks or a few months or a few years. I mean, you just don't know
Mm-hmm.
anything when you're going through it. But just like yourself, what I love about this family is they went out there and they did exactly what you did. They're just like, let's get our head into the books. Let's ask the questions. Let's keep, trying. And that's something I know from my own daughter, who we're pretty sure she's got something going on rare. We've ended up in the hospital with her. She has something that allows, her blood-brain barrier is not as protective as her two siblings. But for the most part, I mean, luckily she's healthy. So, but again, I too have a background. So I often, of advocating for and
Mm-hmm.
researching. So I'm always wondering, how do we empower those families who don't have that background? And also, how do you regard your child who has a rare disease, as instead of feeling like you're a victim with a child who has
Mm-hmm.
a rare disease, you still see them as a whole, complete child. And that's exactly what I love about the Who is Carter Foundation and the parents. They really saw their child as a whole, complete
Mm-hmm.
child, right? And you're just doing what you're doing every day, even if you had a perfectly healthy child with no rare disease.
Absolutely. That might just need different or added supports here and
Exactly.
there. And really all children need certain supports when it comes to,
Totally.
emotional support at one time or another, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
help with their math tutors. None of us are perfect.
Yeah.
And so we all need those supports. And so, we just want to look upon a system and a community, really. The community's never been the issue. Like, I mean, people are willing to go so far
Mm.
for our family and my son, and yeah, but we just really hope that those supports are available for the more vulnerable, the most vulnerable, I guess.
Exactly. One of the questions I have is, over those 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
then, how did you end up finding out that, he had this genetic condition? Like, did the genetic testing get cheaper? Did you still have to pay for it? Did the doctors advocate for it? Like, how did that all come about?
Yeah, so our geneticist at that time, sorry, our geneticist still, Dr. Innes, wonderful man. He really advocated quite heavily for us, and we found out about this program that was run out of Montreal, called Care for Rare. And what they do is they fund these genetic, the whole exome sequences, they're called.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so they ended up taking us on, and we went and got our whole exome sequence done with them. There was a couple issues within the process that they ended up having to. There were issues within Montreal, so they ended up having to send the data down to, I think it was San Diego, and then back up again. So it did take a little bit longer, but yet still, it's good data to have. We definitely, it was worth waiting for. And then we were given a phone call from Dr. Ernest one day, and he said, I really want to get you guys in because I have news to tell you. The appointment was, 2 days later. It was the longest 2 days ever. Because you knew that something was up. Now, not all news is good news. You could get some terrible news. But we thought that any news would be good because it would lead us closer to, best practices and potential treatments and so forth. And so, we walked into the room, and they ended up, he had a little smile on his face, and he said, myself as a geneticist, when I can give this news, this is a very good day for me because we found a needle in a haystack. And they explained it very well of, what the disease is, how it acts, what it responds to. And it made a lot of sense now at that point. So we left there feeling pretty lifted, that, okay, we have a general understanding now of what we're dealing with. Sam could get another relapse next year. He could get another relapse next month. Or he could never have another relapse the rest of his life. So when he has a relapse, he has to relearn how to walk and talk and move and on and so forth. Relapses do happen as, teenagers and as young adults. But he hasn't had one since he was 2 years old. And so we can just, hang our hat on that, the worst is over. And now we're just dealing day to day with the effects that his cerebellum, with the damage of those 2 relapses, he just has to learn little bit by little bit of how to manage the world that's in front of him. So Sam, essentially day to day, if he walks around the house without a walker now. He used to have a walker up until about 2 years ago.
That's amazing.
It looks like he's about to fall over all the time, but he doesn't. He does the very best with what he can. When he eats soup, he has to put his face right down, and so we don't bother about being polite and on and so forth. You just you do it. He's extraordinarily organized. He's had to work really hard all of his life to achieve the things that other kids take for granted. And so he wakes up earlier than anybody else in the house to achieve his tasks by feeding himself breakfast and getting dressed and showering, and he just does all these things on his own. And the beautiful thing is that he just never complains about it. He at times he'll say, oh yeah, I don't want to do that because I'd be terrible at that because of my ataxia.
But a lot of people say that, I don't like swimming, or I'm afraid of this, or I don't want to be seen in a bathing. Like, people have a reason for not doing a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Regardless. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so he's had to work all of his life. And, when it comes to sciences and mathematics, he's got the best grades in his class because he works hard at it. And so I'm not worried about him in life. If he ever wanted to become a professional soccer player, I might worry about him. But he's got enough awareness to know that that's just not his skill set. His skill set is how kind he is, how smart he is, how giving, and he's just a very good boy. And so the beautiful thing as well too about children, I find, is that he's never once been bullied at school. It's beautiful. Kids these days are so inclusive, and I think a lot of adults are say, oh well, geez, what are we to expect these days when do. Oh, come on. Children are just wonderful, and at a very young age, Sam would struggle to get up from his chair to go do things in grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3. And there would always be children going and holding his hand and helping him.
Awesome.
And so, kids wouldn't pick on him because, well, why? So I keep hearing about all these bullies out there, and I just don't see it in our lives. And I see that everybody's kind of rooting for him. And they're like, yeah, Sam's a really fun guy. Yeah, he's good at math. Maybe he can help me out with my math or whatever that is. And so, I'm not worried about Sam in life. He's got a really good head on his shoulders. But I still do think that there is a lot of support that is still needed for,
Mm-hmm.
for kids like him and other ones that are a lot worse off.
And, so having gone through this experience, and I agree with you, like this world is evolving and it's not going to happen overnight. And all the things that we know we need, I mean, everything ends up being bureaucratic. And so we know that takes a long time, to get from A to B, let alone A to Z, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
for some of these rare diseases, as we were chatting about, that when somebody has a rare disease, sometimes parents feel like, how come nobody's doing anything about this? But when your child or you are one of 100 people or one of 10 people in the world or
Mm-hmm.
on the nation, it's important to understand that, you need to have resources to support this.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, you know, if there's not going to be a payback, in the form of treatments and drugs and all of that, because I mean, the more people have the disease, the more payback there's going to be in the long run to be able to fund these rare diseases. And it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like ALS. I mean, ALS would never have the funds to study ALS if it hadn't been for the ICE challenge that
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
so with your son and with Sam's, rare condition,
Mm-hmm.
was that, at what point then did you decide that you wanted to run across Canada?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but I've never been one to shy away from doing something big. Um,
Nice.
I don't really have a lot of fear in my life. It's in fact, you take those personality tests, and in my fear base and my risk taking, it's not it's my risk taking is through the roof, and my fear is like a 2 out of 100. It's
Right.
pretty odd, and that's exactly why I signed up for these ultra marathons, and then I lean so heavily forward because the idea that if you're going to run across the country at 7,200 kilometers, 100 kilometers in, you're exhausted. And if you really thought about it, I've got 7,100 left to go, you're crippled. You can't go there. You just take one step at a time, right? So at the very beginning, at the very onset of Outrun Rare, I was doing that work with Mito Canada, and because really we didn't know how to support my son, because we didn't really have a diagnosis. All I knew it was
Mm-hmm.
rare. There was something there, and it might take us 5 years, might take us 10 years, might take us 25 years, or we might never know.
Yeah.
But yet, I just didn't know how to support them. But I knew I wanted to support my friend and his family with Mito
Mm-hmm.
Canada, and I knew for sure that Sam did not have mitochondrial disease. And so, one thing that I found that was really interesting when doing that work was the siloization of support. And, whenever you and I are, affected by something, we fight for that thing, right? So that's why I think, take breast cancer. Women are so supportive of one another, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And breast cancer is so bloody common. And cancers, really, unto
Yeah.
themselves.
1 in 2 people.
It's amazing. And
Yeah.
so, if you're affected by cancer in your life, there's a likelihood you're going to give to cancer.
Yeah.
And so I got doing a lot of thinking because I was thinking, wait 1 second, if 1 out of every 12 Canadians has a rare disease, where's the support? Where's the funding? Why can't we get this off the ground? And then I realized that there were over 60 rare disease organizations that were solely working on specific rare diseases. So
Right.
they were focusing on Rett syndrome and Fabry's and go down the list. And yet, the question always came up, if it's rare, why should I care? If it only
Mm-hmm.
affects, let's say 300 Canadians, okay, well, why should I care? But if you take the over 7,000 known rare diseases together, it makes up 1 in 12 Canadians.
Yeah. That's
And
a lot.
that's a lot. That's a
Yes.
lot.
Yeah.
And the simple fact that we have never as Canadians, I myself, before having struggled with rare disease, I've never had a discussion with anybody about the needs for more rare disease support or access, or, and you think about mental health with Bell Let's Talk. You think about the Terry Fox Foundation with cancer. We could list off 50, but there's nothing about rare disease.
Yeah.
And so I was getting frustrated and having these conversations with the rare disease community and saying, and rare disease organizations, and saying, guys, we really do need a national campaign. Like, we need something in order to start a conversation about these needs, because all these other countries all over the world have these rare disease strategies that are working. Like, they are working well. And it's all it is it's our government addressing the issue and saying, yes, this is an issue, and here's a center of excellence. Here is funding for and supporting pharmaceuticals with getting orphan drug plans in place. But there's nothing here. And sorry, and now this conversation is starting to whirlwind a little bit, because I got thinking that.
But this is good though, because it's, people need to understand that
it makes, yeah.
Well, that basically when you have an idea, you know, like for example, how come there is no national strategy for rare diseases, or why are all these organizations not banding together? I think for a good majority of people, they'll be like, well, somebody must have thought about it and tried it.
And no one has.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but the thing is that when you recognize that there's a gap anywhere in your community, in your life, in your relationship, in your work, it's so important that people have to step up and change it. You can't wait for somebody else to do it. And I'm certain so many individuals from all of those rare disease organizations probably had that thought too. And so, you know, maybe it's because you know, like you said, your personality test, you know, you score very, very low on the fear and very high on the risk taking. So that's what enabled you. It's like it was the right person, the right situation to be able to go and say, well, I'm just going to do something about it.
Well, yeah, and I'm a disturber. I'm not for everyone, but I'm not okay with the status quo. And I'm not afraid to not just say something about it, but do something about it. Yeah. And so I got thinking that, you know, I could go out and start an organization called the Relapsing Encephalopathy with Cerebellar Ataxia Foundation, and that my son's life would be better. It would be. I guarantee you that. But what about everybody else that doesn't have an advocate? And that's not okay. And, you know, like I said, there's over 7,000 known rare diseases. And, you know, there are countless families that I've reached out to, and they've reached out to me, that desperately need a spotlight within their community and a microphone, and saying, I need support, I need help, I don't know what to do, that are in a lot worse of a position than I am. And so I also got thinking right around that same time about, and I know this is an odd segue, but hang with me.
Good. Here. It all belongs here. This is good.
Is that Humboldt disaster? Remember when there was a bus with a number of hockey playing children who ended up getting into a crash, and a lot of them died. Most of them passed away, I think.
Yeah, I think all but one or two.
And there were so many rules, regulations, bylaws, and laws that needed to be accomplished when it came to the transport industry for years before that. But now every Canadian was talking about this, and they were talking about, oh my goodness, I can't believe that the transport laws and regulations didn't do this and this and this. Every single policymaker out there was clamoring, was in line. The first day that the House of Commons opened, they were passing every bill necessary. And I got thinking, this is ridiculous. Why does it take fireworks in order to get things done? Because it's all politics.
Yeah.
And then I got thinking about Terry Fox. And, you know, I'm the strongest ultramarathoner in Canada. And I could do this. And when I tell people about running 105 kilometers every day for 67 days in a row, they don't get it, right? Because they're like, I don't get it. You know, how is that possible? Well, you know, it's my skill set. I'm not very good at most things, but I can do that, right? And so, you know, and I would run to the ends of the earth for my son. I really would. And maybe maybe this might just be crazy enough to be able to bend the needle on rare disease in Canada. The science behind the standing ovation, you know, I was so frustrated in 2018. Sorry, now I'm getting ahead of myself with the
Yeah,
story.
no, it's good.
But yeah, let's not do that. But they basically, it takes fireworks and it takes a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
When it comes to all rare disease organizations coming together, we're fighting for the 1 in 12 because rare really is everywhere.
Yeah.
And really, I think if Canadians only knew of the void within their system, they would do something about it. But they don't. Um, and it's, and I think I can do something about that through my storytelling opportunities as a runner.
I love that you used your skill set, first of all, because, you know, you're a strong runner, a strong athlete, and you're like, there's, you know, this is something I can do well. And, you know, maybe fighting policies, fighting government, you know, collaborating with all these organizations, you know, obviously something you hadn't done before, but what you led with was your skill set, and that opens up the doors to be able to accomplish all these other areas in your life that you might not have skill sets, but at least you know, you're going to figure it out and you're just going to do it. But, and, you know, I often say that, you know, with all of our employees as well, I'm like, let's do the work that you're good at, that you love doing. Let's start from there, because
Mm-hmm.
when you are doing that, you're getting energy from it. You're good at it, and you like waking up every morning and doing that thing. And so, um, you know, I love that you led with that for sure. I think that that's it's a perfect melding, right? Of
Well,
fighting for
thank
your
you.
son, using your skill set. And and when you first came up with this, and you decided to do this, what, you know, were people thinking like, this is absolutely crazy? Why would you do this? There's so many other ways. Like, what was the feedback from, you know, people that you started telling this to? And especially around the rare disorder part, because people obviously
Mm-hmm.
don't know this information, that 1 in 12 Canadians have a rare disease.
Right, right. And keep in mind as well too, I just came off of the treadmill, event. So, 24
True.
hours running on. So crazy, they came to expect it, right? It
Right.
was like, oh, well, there goes Dave with another idea. But this was bigger and
Yeah.
broader and more encompassing and risky as well too. Like there's running along the highway is for all summer long is risky, and there's so many ways it could go wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so ultimately when I first brought it up, um, I'm so lucky as well too, because there's that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with most.
Yeah. I love that saying.
um, and I've got a good 25 people that I like to pull and tug, and we're all very symbiotic with one another, and they're real winners. And I mean to, I guess what I'm saying, ultra marathoners are very interesting people, and they grab onto a bone and they don't quit. They're tough, stubborn people, but they're also incredible with their skill sets. And what I found was, number one, you know, everybody loves a team player.
Yeah.
And so, but as well too, everybody's looking for leadership and everybody wants to be behind something great.
Yes.
Um, but it might just be somebody else's idea, but they want you to knock on their door and say, I need your help. And if you go to anybody and say, I need your help and support, can you help me? Because I think you can. It's amazing. People line up. And so I had, and I know this sounds ridiculous, I had 30 to 35 volunteers all doing, logistics and marketing and nobody was on payroll. And it was
It's
beautiful.
amazing.
But these were all, and I would say maybe 3% of them were affected by rare disease in their lives. So these were the
Wow.
running community that were just like, wow, I need to get behind this and I need to support this. And I love running. And let's face it, it's kind of a cool event.
Yeah.
The Trans Canadian Speed Record. But these were really people. These were friends that were saying, Dave, yeah, I'll give up a number of hours every week to help you in the way that I can help you in this. And so in the end, we were almost turning away volunteers. It was really quite nice. The level of support that I got.
And I love that you also were running for a cause, because since I started training for my trip across Canada, it's been interesting. I just listened to every audiobook on running that there is. Like literally people are telling me about, and if I can get in an audio format, it's in my ears. But the one thing that did stick out to me, I'm like, all of these people who've written these books, and they are amazing people, and they do talk about how incredible the community is. Even though it's an individualized sport, it's actually a family. It's a team of, individualized runners doing their ultra training. But the one thing I was like, man, if they would only just run for a cause. Like a lot of them are literally just running to beat a record, or to, they just are, a lot of them will say they're addicted in a positive way, passionately motivated, to run. But they're not. And I'm like, they're doing something so remarkable that very, very few people in the world do. And if they just attach themselves to a cause, with this world would have literally cures for everything.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. Because, you think about and those running, podcasts or the books that you're reading or listening to, there's just such compelling stories, and
Yeah.
the human endurance feats, and what the human body is capable of doing. You know but we're also passionate about something, and
Yeah.
but I think that a lot of the time, I think that people kind of sit back and go, somebody else will do it,
Yeah.
or that other great group is doing really good work, or whatever. And I find that um, if people would just state their purpose
Yeah.
and um, act with their hearts first, you'd be alarmed by how many people in your life will line up to support you in that way.
Yeah.
um, and we all have something that we feel passionate about, whether
Yeah.
it's mental illness, whether it is cancer research, whether it's anything. And so, yeah, I would, I think the world is turning into, year by year, it's turning into more of a loving, caring, compassionate place.
Yeah.
Um, but, at times I wonder if it could get there a bit quicker.
Yeah, exactly. And not to say anything about any of these runners, because they're
Hmm.
serving their purpose, even just by,
Hmm.
being out there and setting an example for what the human body is
Right.
capable of doing, which then tells me that, okay, well, if they can do it, then maybe I can do it. And I
Hmm.
mean, I'm not going to know until I try. And so I'll let you know
Right.
next year at this time. So they are serving their purpose, even if it's that they're not fighting for a cause. But I just
Hmm.
think that for sure, if you're going to expend that time and energy and that incredible mindset that you need to be able to
Mm.
do endurance athlete or athletic, endeavors, then that
Hmm.
mindset, if you can apply it to a cause as
Hmm.
well, like you could achieve literally anything.
Really, because the world is looking upon endurance athletes for a lot of wisdom and strength, especially at a time of COVID and
Hmm.
quarantine. I've seen so many people struggling throughout all
Hmm.
this, and they just wonder, how do you endure, like week after
Yeah.
week, month after month? What's it going to look like year after year?
Yeah.
Um, how do we endure? And yet, you know, ultra marathoners, endurance athletes, yeah, we might not be the best of everything, but that we can figure that out for whatever
Exactly.
reason. And so when it comes to, I think that we all have wisdom that we go share and support with one another, as long as everybody's willing to listen.
Yeah.
And I think that at a time like this during quarantine, ultramarathoners and endurance athletes have a gift that we can bestow upon the world,
Yeah.
because for whatever reason, when you're in the middle of Manitoba and you're doing your trek across Canada, there's a lot of thoughts in your
Yeah.
head, and there's a lot of opportunity to quit or to slow down or to sit in the ditch for an extra 10 minutes. The voices in your head get pretty loud.
Hmm.
And how do you manage that? You're absolutely right. So yeah, so taking those gifts and the learned skills, and to translate that to giving. Because let's face it, um, I like to think at times that I've got it pretty rough. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I'm running a 200-mile race and I'm 150 miles in, and yeah, it's uncomfortable. I won't lie to you. It's not a comfortable thing. But then you are reminded, sometimes by others, and I would love to tell you a story about that, that we really don't have it all that hard. And perspective is everything. And when you can do anything in the world, just be a giver.
Yeah. And being of service too is just one of the things that I've known my whole life to be one of the best things to
Mm-hmm.
completely lift you up and elevate you. And to, it's a completely selfish act, I think, to be a giver and to be of service. And, because you do get so much back from it. But I know that I work with a lot of people who have mental health conditions, and the minute they start being another person and helping them, all of a sudden their mind shifts, and all of a sudden their
Mm-hmm.
perspective shifts, and all of a sudden they're helping somebody else, and together they're both being helped in that process. So if somebody is feeling like they're struggling, and they have their head between their knees and I don't know what to do, I mean, the first thing I say is like, go out and help somebody else. Just go help somebody else first, and I guarantee you're going to have one foot in front of the other, helping yourself at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
offer help and give support without wanting to receive anything in return.
exactly.
And it's a beautiful feeling.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So here you are. So you just get off this 24-hour treadmill, I don't even know, ultra treadmill race competition.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
world record challenge, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. The world record
Mm-hmm.
challenge. And then you announce that you want to run for um, rare diseases
Mm-hmm.
altogether in general.
Altogether. Mm-hmm.
And so what was the first step? Did you start reaching out to these
Oh,
other organizations or?
absolutely. So at that time, and I knew I wanted to be a third-party fundraiser,
Mhm.
um, because again, I'm not for everyone, and
Yeah.
I am a bit of a maverick, and so I kind of want to be the one calling the shots.
Yeah.
And third-party fundraisers are a wonderful thing. I mean, a lot of charities are relying upon individuals going and running a marathon and raising $2,000 for that charity,
Yeah.
or doing a bake sale or a car wash. And I got thinking that what's more important, the financial piece or the awareness piece?
Mhm.
And I had this, and I'm going to circle back to this in a bit, but I had this idea at the very beginning, and I'm really frustrated in 2018 that I abandoned it. But I'll get to that
Mm.
that idea. That was, I was talked out of it, and I've learned as well too. Don't be talked out of your passion. Don't be
Yeah.
talked out of your North Star, right? And so I contacted the Rare Disease Foundation, and I said, um, "My name's Dave Proctor. I have founded this brand new organization called Outrun Rare, and I would like to raise you $1 million. But more so, I want to get rare disease on the map." And they were very happy to take my phone call, and that's where we started with the Rare Disease Foundation. And we worked, and they were overseeing things, just because when it came to messaging and when it came to proper protocol, like I get it. It's they're that's what they need to do. Um,
Mhm.
And so throughout the whole process, yeah, we boy, it was a lot of work, and it was all branding, and it was all development of logos, and putting together a communication strategy, and how do we do this, and then how do we angle it, and then even the permitting work across the country, and mapping, and boy, there was a lot of moving parts. Getting all the sponsors on board, especially when we're not a proven entity, we're brand new.
Yeah.
When we make these phone calls, we got out of every 20 phone calls we made for sponsorship, we got 19 no's, and we got some laughter as well too,
I'm sure.
because it does seem unreal.
Yeah.
Like, what are you trying to do here? But the companies that end up seeing it, they saw it, and they jumped in, and so we were able to completely fund by sponsors the entire project. So
That's
any monies
amazing.
that was going to be raised was going to go directly to the Rare Disease Foundation, and all of the expenses were that of on the sponsors. So we were very, very happy that we were able to do that. So if you were to donate $20, it goes directly to the charity. Very, very happy about that.
That's
And
amazing.
so ultimately we kind of made it up as we went along. We said, well, how hard could this really be? Um, and it turned out to be hard. But they say
Yeah.
when you're struggling, you're growing, right? Um,
And also, I love what you just said about that, because I think so many people want to know every step of the way, have their
mm,
plan, and know that it's going to go like this. And then if they can't
mhm.
see that, then they don't do it. Whereas naivete, like I would say on my personality test, my score, 10 out of 10 or 100 out of 100 on being naive in a lot of cases. But it really does actually allow you to move forward and just go, you know what, I will figure it out, because you
Right.
can never plan for something like this. Like I know,
Hmm.
what's his name? Oh my gosh. The Iron Cowboy,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like getting to one place where they were like, you can't be running on the road here, like get out of here, and
Hmm.
every racer, I'm sure, and endurance athlete has been in a position like that where you don't have a permit to be on that road, or you don't have whatever it is. And
Right.
so, but you just have to be able to be flexible, I imagine, and also know you have a plan, but probably the plan's going to have to change every once in a while.
Well, and that's why I think as well too that endurance athletes with their I almost call it like a meh personality,
I like
because
that.
most people end up overthinking things,
Yeah.
right? But if you're running, um, so just a story. I was talking with my friend Pete, who has a Trans-American speed record, and he was running unassisted from the northern tip of Alaska down the southern tip of Florida, pushing a baby stroller, and he was telling me that he ended up having to ship products like his wheels, his inner tubes would keep bursting, and he was so frustrated. So he shipped to the next city some more tubes, and the one side blew, and he could hear the other side go do 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 do, and it went like that for quite a while, and then. And then he said, "Well, it's a good thing that I've got new tubes coming up, right? I otherwise I would be. I'm pushing a dead stroller. It's really hard to push, and so he's like, you know what? My life was good though, because I knew I had new tubes coming up." And he left it there in the conversation, and I was like, kind of like, okay, Pete, how long did you run on the stroller with no, when it wasn't inflated? And he was like, oh, it wasn't far. And I was like, no, 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 you're
How
not
long
going to
was
get away
it?
with that. And he was like, oh, 150 miles.
Oh my gosh.
So the average person would just lose it, right? They would cry in the ditch, but Pete was like, meh, you know what? I've dealt with worse. I'll be fine.
Exactly.
But he didn't even think it was a big enough deal to then tell me about it in the conversation. And that's it. That's the meh.
He's like the
Like,
king of May.
yeah, you're just like, I'll get through this. I'll be fine. So everything
Yeah.
else that everybody else is stressing about, right? He's just living in the moment, looking around at the beautiful scenery, and it's beautiful. And so a guy like him, you let him loose on a on charitable giving,
Yeah.
he'll go nuts with it. And so yeah, I think you're absolutely right. More endurance athletes do need to be running and
Yeah.
performing for a cause.
Yeah, exactly. Because nothing's going to stop them, right? Like hail won't stop them. You talked about running through a tornado,
Right. Yeah.
which didn't stop. Did that stop you at
No,
that point?
well, it's a funny story. So in 2018, with the campaign, I started running in Victoria, and by the time I hit Medicine Hat, Alberta, I was running about 105 kilometers every day. And I remember waking up that morning, and there was a vicious headwind. I was running from west to east. Normally, typically the headwind is east to west
Right.
in through the prairies. And so it was vicious. And I was running along, and I was running, I think it was sustained 40, 50 kilometer an hour gusts. and it picked up and picked up. And by the time I got in through Medicine Hat, it was worse. But as I ran through Medicine Hat, it turned to the side, and I was running, and I was angled, and like leaning into the tailwind, into the side wind. And I looked to the north, and I saw a funnel cloud forming. And I called my crew in an RV, and I said, "Hey, Wayne, do you look to the north? Do you see that too?" And he says, "Uh-huh." And he said, "Dave, look right behind you. I'm on you. So if this comes in, I'm going to pull in front of you, you dive in, and I'll get you to safety." So we kept our eye to the north, to that storm that was coming in, but we didn't see what was coming in from the south, and we just got hit by just as bad of a storm.
Oh my gosh.
And the hail was unreal. And I run with a cowboy hat on as well too, which really protects you from hail. And so, boy, I got destroyed. And Wayne pulls in front of me. And at that day as well too, the side view mirror blew off. Like it literally blew off. That's how bad the wind was. And I was in the trailer, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm 85 kilometers into my day. There's no way. Like, I've worked so hard today. There's no way I'm going to get my 105 in. And then the wind stopped about 20 minutes later. And Wayne goes outside, and all of a sudden I hear outside, I'm not going to swear on your podcast, but he said something like, "Holy moly, Dave, you get your butt out here." Your side wind turned into an 80-kilometer an hour tailwind. Wow. And so I didn't run 105, I ran 115 kilometers because you just needed to pick up your knees. And It just like threw you down the road. It was beautiful. And so, there it is, you think, it couldn't get any worse, couldn't get worse. And then it actually gets way better. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much the same theme that's come out of most of the books that I've, read from all of these athletes, the ones that have broken their toes just before the race starts, the ones that are, just some of the stories are so incredible. It's amazing what the human body can recover from and also just work through in a very depleted, injured state as well. And the human body is resilient. It's incredible what it, can tolerate, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's the mindset is also like very far the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so the mind is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And like I really do believe that the mind only knows two things, right? The pictures you draw for it and the words that you tell it. And it doesn't know if you're trying to kid it or you're trying to work around or it's insecurity. And that's that. And so I think we have to be very careful with the pictures we tell ourselves or pictures we draw for ourselves and in our minds and the words that we tell ourselves. One reason why I never, ever talk about running is being painful or suffering in agony, because if I talk about public speaking as being, the worst thing ever, do you really think that's setting the stage for you to go out and get better at public speaking? And the nerves and on and so forth. And so I want to get better at running. And it really is the best part of my day. I love going out for a jog every day. And so, it's so beautiful, the idea that you can go for a run. And when you think you're done, you've got so much left in the tank. And as long as you can convince yourself that you're fine, you're fine. And you could go for days and days and days and days. I've fallen in love with these things called backyard races. So, backyard style events. And it was, created by this guy. His name's Lazarus Lake down in Tennessee. You might have seen the Barkley marathons. Yeah. So that's Lazarus Lake. That's the chain smoking hillbilly, the diabolical hillbilly from Tennessee. And so his more popular race, more than the Barkley marathons now, is called Backyard. And I was down in his backyard last year at the World Championships of Backyard Racing. And what it is, it's a 6.7 or 4.18 mile looped course around his backyard. It's trail. And you run it every hour on the hour until you can't. And there's one winner and everybody else loses, and that's that.
Wow.
And it's so beautiful because you you go somewhere and you're like, but as long as you have a reasonable response to that bell that says, okay, time to go again,
Yeah.
then you're fine. The moment that you say, I can't do this anymore, you
Yeah.
might as well just stop.
And it's funny that you bring that up because yesterday I, thought my daughter was playing with a friend and I had to get one of my runs in for the day. And I was like, how am I going to do this? I can't leave them at home. They're 9 years old, but I need to go for the run. My husband was at work. And so I said, come on, kids, let's go. You're hopping on your bikes. You can ride your bike while I run in. It was a nice, easy Z2, 50-minute. That's it. Like, nice short run. And which is so funny that I say that because literally 8 weeks ago, that would have been such a long run for me. But it's amazing how you can advance and progress so quickly too.
Adapt. Yeah.
It is amazing. But then, of course, 15 minutes into the run, the girls looked at the river and they saw a big patch of beautiful sand. And they were like, we don't want to bike. It's too hot. And there's bugs in the woods. And they want to go play on the sand. And I was like, oh my gosh. So they went and played by the river in the sand. And I ran the same 100-meter stretch beside them. So I can still see them. Still, the river's pretty shallow, so I could jump in if I need to grab them. Super slow moving in case somebody thinks I'm really irresponsible for letting 2 9-year-olds play. I was right there. But that's how I ended up having to run my 35 extra minutes. And I mean, that's nothing compared to the backyard, or the Barkley Marathon or this backyard racing. But it was interesting because I was like, oh my gosh, at first I was disappointed for a split second. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to work on technique. I'm going to work on, getting into a meditative state. And it's so funny because when you look on Strava, it's like this big red ball where I'm just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Oh, that's great.
And people in the woods thought I was crazy. I'm sure everybody that passed me, they're like, what's that lady doing? Is she afraid of the bears in the woods? Or, she's just going to stay in one spot. Right. But it is amazing what your mind can do when you just change your perception and tell yourself a different story.
Well, that's it, right? And sometimes those repetitive little things, like, people are amazed, when they have to go to the mountains and go and see beautiful, scenery when it comes to, sometimes just going to your local track and running around in circles, there's something so meditative about routine and doing the same thing over and over, and you lose your mind. Yeah. Like you drift into this beautiful flow state, and it's so easy to manage. It's such a beautiful state, and I think it's something that's really missing from humans in our experience. It's just that, it's okay to just drift away and to not, can you really observe the moon without calling it a moon? Yeah. And it's it's to just exist in the space for what it is with no judgment. It's exactly. It's mindlessness, but it's mindfulness all at the same time. It's really quite a beautiful thing, and it's a gift to be able to do that across the country. So I'm jealous for you. I'm looking forward to hearing that story.
Yeah, well, I love that you brought that up as well, because I think when you do things repetitively as well, that it could be the same thing, but every day when you view it, or every time you go around it, you can see something different as well. A lot of it, people say, like, we've been there, done that. We're in a state in the world where it's new apps every 2 minutes, new, technology, new iPhone, new this, new that, new style, new fashion. But you know what? Sometimes when you actually stay with the old and just repeat it over and over and over again, you get a different appreciation for it as well. And there's beauty in it in 100,000 different ways.
And, there was a race that I did last year, and it was called 6 Days in the Dome. And it's exactly what you think it is. It's down in Milwaukee, and it was an indoor track, like speed skating track. That was 443 meters in length. I think it's 443 meters. And you ran for 6 days straight. So the gun goes off, and then 144 hours later, the gun goes off again, and you stop. Now, how far can you travel within 6 days? Now, you can stop as often as you want. You can take a nap. You can go get a massage. You could do whatever you want. But if you're not running, you're not building mileage. Yeah. And so it's such a beautiful thing, because I know a lot of people would say, "Ooh, okay, that's hell." Um, no, no, you go somewhere pretty cool in
Mm-hmm.
those days, and you give yourself an opportunity to just drift,
Wow.
um, and be okay in the moment. I don't know about you, but I'm constantly grabbing my phone and checking Instagram and emails
Totally.
and on and so forth. You stay busy because this is what we're supposed to do. Um, and it's almost like I'm afraid of the thoughts and feelings that are in my own head at times. Um, but I give myself permission when I'm
Yeah.
running to just drift, and it's a very rewarding space. And after a while, everybody seems to think like, oh my goodness, wasn't that tough? Like,
Yeah.
every day, most of my days I run about 50 kilometers, and so today I ran
Wow.
for about 50 kilometers, and I think it's like 51, I think. But it was it hard? I had a 4 hour meditation session.
Wow.
I mean, isn't that beautiful? Like, I
Yeah.
love the fact that that I can do that, and that I'm privileged enough that I have the opportunity to do that
Yeah.
as well too. And so again, be careful what you tell yourself,
Yeah.
and the pictures we draw for ourselves, because you could go onto social media and everybody's talking about pain and suffering and agony with their runs and their bike rides and their this and that. Yeah, it's I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I get it, because that's the believable story. That's how we framed running all this time. Is
Yeah.
running is hard, but running is also a gift, and brings us back to something like discomfort and
Yeah.
challenge is something that's so human amongst all of us. And sometimes by removing all of that, we're removing part of our human, self. And I
So
think that,
good.
hiking a mountain and being 3/4 of the way up, thinking, I don't know if I can do this, but pushing through and observing from the top of the mountain, there's just something beautiful and human about that.
And it's really accessible to everybody as well. So that meditative state, flow state is accessible to everybody. I mean, if running only really started in the 60s in North America,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And when people ran, then they ran in a pair of Keds, like they didn't
Yeah.
have fancy running shoes. And truly, if we allow ourselves to run barefoot or walk barefoot in the sand for a little while, we can get back to that as well. So even if
Mm-hmm.
somebody's saying, well, I don't have $200 for a pair of running shoes, you don't need $200 for a
Mm-hmm.
pair of running shoes. And you don't need to go fast and hard as well, right? To the
Mm-hmm.
point where you just feel exhausted and your muscles are so sore the next day. Like, you can literally just go at a tiny little, jog,
Mm-hmm.
and you can go for 20 minutes, you can go for 10 minutes, or whatever it is. You can do intervals. There's no one style of running. And so
Right.
it's truly accessible to everybody
Yeah, because it's
for the
effort,
least amount of
isn't
money.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, like all it is effort,
Yeah.
and it's not. And I get it. We have a measuring stick and we size one another up, and the runners are the worst for doing that, because we get onto social media and, oh, I didn't run as far as that guy, I didn't run as fast as her.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really about effort, and it's
Yeah.
about just going out and doing your best, with what you have. And so, running is a very primitive thing that
Very.
it's been around for since the beginning of time. Our bodies need to move. Our feet need to create structure around itself in order to support our body weight.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it is quite a beautiful thing. I know that when I go for a run, I'm a lot kinder. I'm a lot more gentle with
Mm-hmm.
my kids. I'm a lot better of a human being,
Yeah.
because it puts my mental state into a space of relative bliss, I guess you
Yeah.
could call it.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. There's a lot of benefit, but of course, I think I'm preaching to the choir. I think that you found that as well too.
But I think for our audience that's listening, I think a lot of people, I did it for the last 16 years. Like, I had this little voice that kept saying, God, I want to go for a run. But I was like, oh, I
Mm,
can't. My body, my knees, my back, I've carried 3 children, my
right.
belly's separated. I'm way
Mm-hmm.
too much. I don't have enough time. I don't have the right shoes. If I just get the
Mm-hmm.
right pair of running pants, then I'll do it, but then I
Right,
wouldn't. So
right.
we tell ourselves all of these things. But, for all of our listeners out there, I mean, if I could go 16 years with maybe running 5 times, and then literally 8 weeks ago, I started running.
Mm.
But I had set this goal to run across Canada, which I know probably sounds ridiculous, to run and cycle across Canada. But, I've just taken it literally one small step at a time. And I've hired a great coach now who's, but I mean, even a lot of what he's telling me, you can find for free on the internet. So you don't need to hire somebody to teach you how
Mm-hmm.
to run. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just doing that to make sure I get across Canada and I achieve my goal, because we do have sponsors and we have everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to do it. But the thing that, everything that you're saying about running, it is so accessible no matter what age you are.
Mm.
And when you get into that state where you actually listen to your everything, the negative, the positive, the everything, I think that that's when you all of a sudden can tap into what it is and who you are supposed to be, that potential, and in your case, you're running for your son, to raise awareness, not just for your son, but everybody's son, everybody's daughter,
Mm-hmm.
who has a rare disease, for the present and the future. And I don't know, I just think it would be very interesting if, we brought running back into the curriculum at schools, because it's been knocked out, right?
Well, and I think about, every curriculum in Canada. Sorry, not curriculum, I guess, but the Terry Fox run.
Mm-hmm.
What I love about that is it's not about running. I mean, did you see the prosthetic on his leg? It was like
Yeah.
a baseball bat.
Yeah,
It was incredible, but it was hope, and it
exactly.
was it was will, and it was so much more. It was so much, so many wonderful things about the human species, the
Yeah.
human condition. That's everything. That's great. And all he really did was, and because nobody, like, do you know how far he ran every day?
So, didn't he do a marathon every day?
Yeah, it was a marathon, but most
Yeah.
people don't know that, and most
Yeah.
people, they don't care because it
Yeah.
was effort. They saw
Exactly.
him out there putting in effort,
Day after
and
day.
day after day, and
Yeah.
it was beautiful. His effort is beautiful, and everyone's effort is beautiful. If you struggle with going for a walk around your block, that's
Yeah.
beautiful,
That is.
because ultimately what you're wanting, what you're choosing is to progress. What you're
Yeah.
doing is you're choosing to, and it might be, so you might say, oh, I'm not a real runner, oh, I'm not, skinny like those people. It doesn't matter. It's effort. You're
Yeah.
putting in the effort, and you gotta respect that.
Yeah.
And it's so yeah. I think that there's so many different things about, you know running for a cause, giving, supporting, but as well too, just putting your best foot forward, and what running represents. Yeah, these are really valuable lessons for children in schools. I would
Yeah.
love to see more of that.
Exactly. And the other part about that too is that, for Terry Fox, he didn't make his way across Canada. I mean, he had to stop in Ontario. And, but look at the legacy he left, even
Right.
though he didn't make it across Canada. So it
Mm,
wasn't a failure. And
no.
so instead of, thinking if I start something, but, not starting because you think you might fail and you might not achieve your end goal, why don't you
Mhm.
just start and see what happens? And
Right.
he left an international legacy, like not just a legacy in Canada, but an international legacy. And that's very similar to, what you did as well, right? Like you were saying that you made it to Winnipeg.
Yeah. So in 2018, it's a bit of a long story. I'll shorten it up as much as I can. It unfortunately didn't end the way we wanted it to. We wanted to end up in St. John's, in under 72 hours,
Yeah.
and really get that national attention when it came to, oh my goodness, I can't believe he's about to do that, as I go through Ontario and Quebec and
Yeah.
then the Maritimes. Um, Only days before starting the run across Canada in Victoria, I herniated my disc in my L5S1. And I was petrified because we had all these sponsors, we put out all this communications that we were going to do this. And I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to get off of the island. You know, it was only 32 kilometers to get up to the Tsawwassen ferry, or the ferry that goes up to Tsawwassen.
Yeah.
And I was worried that I wouldn't be able to do it. But I started running and it felt better as I ran. I was perfect. I was thinking, perfect. Okay, great. Because I'm going to be running for 12 to 14 hours a day for the next over 2 months.
Yeah.
If this is feeling better as I run, I'll just, you know. Now, what I didn't understand was that at the end of the day, when I stopped running, it seized up and it was terrible. It was, and all cameras were off. There was no, and it was just me eating in pain and going to sleep and not sleeping well because of the pain. And wake up the next day thinking, okay, I'm not sleeping. And I'm in so much pain. I just can't wait to run so I can be out of pain again.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that day in and day out, I went ahead and still did that. And it never really got better. But I remember when I came into Calgary on day 11, I thought, okay, you know what, I can do this. Like I can deal with pain and I can deal with suffering. You know, because I think it's worth it, right? And I signed a contract with myself that, okay, I can do this. If this is the worst thing that it gets, I can end up, you know, just getting major medical help when I get to the Maritimes or into St. John's. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out that way. And when I was running through Saskatchewan, things progressed. And yeah, if you don't mind, I was running one day and I noticed, I was like, oh, my water bottle leaked. No, I wet myself. And that was the first of many. And then I talked to my doctor, and he said that he really does think that compression on the L5S1 is now gone down to what's called quadra equina, and it wraps around you and start losing internal organ function. And he said, you know, this could be surgical. You need to stop now. I still ran for a couple of days because I thought I could somehow run through this. I told my wife, and she immediately said, okay, you're done.
Yeah.
And I just needed permission. I was just, okay.
Yeah.
And that was a really hard day. It was very, very painful to go. The pain of stopping was a lot worse than the pain of my back.
Yeah, of course.
The beautiful thing that happened thereafter was I made a video, lying in the bed with my children and my wife, and I told the world that I was no longer going to be running. But if you could go to our website, and if you go for a 2-kilometer walk after dinner, if you go for a 10-kilometer run on the weekends, if you could donate your kilometers, because we still need to get from where we are on the east side of Winnipeg all the way to St. John's. And we're not going to give up on this, and we're going to do this together. So what was really quite cool over the next month was we didn't just get to St. John's, we ended up circumnavigating the entire planet with the amount of kilometers that we received. And just the amount of support and the amount of people that were getting behind that. And what was most important about that was the message that was sent, not to me, but it was sent to me too. I read it.
Yeah.
But the message that was sent to all the rare families out there.
Exactly.
That didn't have a stage or a spotlight or a microphone. And the message that Canadians were telling them was that rare does matter.
Yeah.
You matter. Your struggle matters. You're supported. And that brought me to tears, because I thought, finally they're getting the acknowledgement. And even if it doesn't follow with, better healthcare, better support, at least it's something, right? And maybe it's a start of something great. The day that I ended up stopping on the east side of Winnipeg, I knew that I would be back on Trans-Canada Highway doing this again. And so I just knew it. I didn't know.
And how's your back now?
It's great. Yeah. So I end up going and getting a number of MRIs.
Mm-hmm.
on my back, and then you could see it with the physio. Turns out you have to listen to your physiotherapist. And so when you're doing, when they say do this and this and this, and I'm diligent. If I'm not running for like
Yeah.
4 hours today, I'm doing physio for 4 hours. If I'm
Right.
injured, I'm doing a lot to get better.
Right.
And I recovered quite well. It took me still 6 to 9 months to recover, to start running again.
Yeah.
But you know, with those MRIs, I was pretty confident that the problem's gone, and that I just really
Amazing.
need to focus on core work and to make sure that things like that don't happen again.
So glad that you said that, because I haven't done my core work in the last couple of days, and I was like, oh, you know, I feel so strong and fine, but it is
Right.
true
And then
that,
like that,
yeah,
you're done.
yeah,
And you don't want to mess around with the back or the T-spine. Like it's,
no,
yeah, you're in trouble when your core doesn't stabilize what you need it to stabilize.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, my stomach muscles separated after my second child. I was pregnant with my
Mm,
second child, or while I was pregnant with her. And so that's another thing that I have to really work extra hard neurologically to think
right,
about, always, you know, contracting and holding, because the muscles just are, you know, like the fascia is so separated and everything. But
right,
so yeah, that is, I mean, that it is so important for everybody out there. Even if you're not planning on running, focus on your core work, please. It's
right.
really important. Your back and your core together work as one. And the
Absolutely.
other thing that I love that you said is, you know, how much, like, everybody's effort, you contributed all of those miles and kilometers around the world, and they really spoke
Mm,
up, you know,
yeah.
in speaking for those who can't speak for themselves. I mean, that's what we all need to be doing, right? And that's what you're doing with this run, which you're going to do again, like you're planning on leaving next year as well, if
We
all
are.
things go well, COVID wise. And
Yeah, so we're planning, we have a plan B.
mm,
We have a plan A, we have a plan B. You know, yeah, it broke my heart this year that we ended up having to postpone the run across Canada, but it was the right thing to do. Now
yeah,
we now look back and go, oh wow, yeah, we didn't stop soon enough, really.
right.
Um, and you know, so it was the right thing to do, and we're so very happy. But you know, I look at rare families and I still think about their struggles, and they're still there. All you know, all the struggles are still there, and you know, that including mental health. It's even getting
Yeah,
worse, right?
exactly.
And so, you know, I know that this is still needs to happen, but it needs to happen at a reasonable, safe time. And
Exactly.
I don't know if 2021 is that time. I'm going to start planning and organizing it, but I just don't know. Yeah, and it's so much of this is dependent upon how the curve goes.
Yeah,
You know, vaccinations. Who knows? There's a lot that I don't understand. That I mean, I know that people all over the world, the greatest minds, are all working on this.
yeah,
And so I would love to run across the country next year, but it might need to be pushed back to 2022. But we'll still do something
yeah,
in order to drive awareness and attention and things. And then of course the second piece is what's our ask from the Canadian public. Um,
exactly.
and you know, I'm going to go back to an earlier part of our conversation when I talked about the fact that I abandoned my North Star early in the process, and I started listening to others and invested interests. And me and the team, the core team, we've come back and we've said, you know what? No, we need to stick to what we first thought was the grassroots movement behind all of this. And I truly believe that there are a lot of organizations and charities that are all asking for money, because
Mm-hmm.
money does get you a long way.
It does. Yep.
But we're the only developed country in the world without a rare disease strategy or an orphan drug plan. And if Canadians only knew that, they would do something about it. And so at the very beginning, at the very onset, and I'm so frustrated with myself now, because now it's speaking to me louder than it's ever spoken before, that I need to construct the largest petition in Canadian history.
Yeah.
And if I can get 1 million signatures, and I've made great contacts in Ottawa, And I've told them, I said, if I get the largest petition in Canadian history, you can't not do something about this. You have to enact a rare disease strategy. There's been a couple of organizations in Canada that have been lobbying politics for years and years and years. And, I've always thought in the back part of my brain, and part of me thought as well, too, I'm not an expert. I'm not a lobbyist, but yet I'm also fearless and I'm passionate. So that's got to count for something. And I kept thinking that, you don't lobby government, you lobby people.
Exactly.
And if we can end up creating a conversation amongst Canadians about the needs for more rare disease support and access, and that this void exists, then government, just like in the Humboldt disaster, not just like the Humboldt disaster, because that was tragedy.
Yeah.
What we're hoping is that Canadians will move upon triumph and the human spirit instead of, unfortunately, tragedy, right?
Yeah.
So that's my North Star. It's
amazing.
We need to create a movement where if I were to tell every Canadian, put your wallets away, please give me your support.
Yeah.
What's more important than your money is your time.
Yeah.
If you
your
could
signature.
take 5 minutes and then take 10 minutes and walk it around your office and tell, hey, do you guys hear about this guy who's doing this? Did you know that Canada is the only developed country in the world without a rare disease strategy? I think it's got legs, and I think that people will support that, and especially at a time like this when there's turmoil. I think we're all looking for something great that we can all get behind, and in the end, pump our fist in the air and go, yeah, we did it. 100%. I signed that petition, and it bent the needle when it came to supporting these vulnerable families. So that's my hope.
And I love that. It's because that, again, just like running, everybody can do that. Everybody can read a paragraph, sign a petition, and it's amazing what that does. Another thing too that I was thinking that you can do, having worked in all levels of government, and seeing what moves the needle, it's also finding that person internally who has a child with a rare disease, because that's often how the needle gets moved. It's because there's someone internally who is extremely passionate, for their own, self-interest. And it's not a bad self-interest, because, and, some people will say it's nepotism. Some people will say they'll have all these different labels for it, but it doesn't matter. We're human beings. And when it, it comes to our own personal health or our family's health, we will move mountains just like you will run across Canada, for your son and everybody else's son, that's affected by a rare disease. And so, it would be to ask that question, like, who do you know that has a rare disease, and go directly to that person. Like, we've had nonprofits started that way. We've had, different organizations get up and running, funding come through because of that. And money does make the world go round, but start with those petitions because they're free. Yeah.
Well, and the beautiful thing about that too is teamwork, right?
Exactly.
I don't need to know how to do everything, but I also need to give myself enough credit that, okay, maybe I know how to do a little bit more than what I know. Or worse than what I thought. But having those members of parliament and those people in politics, but also have those other lobbyists. Have all those other people that, just ask for support and say, you're an expert in this. What do I need to do? Like, I'll give you the vehicle for this to occur, this run across Canada, which I believe has legs. It's a good vehicle. Just as your trans-Canadian trek across country, it's got legs. But really, it's about constructing that team. That this person does this really well. This person does this really well, and then driving passion amongst that team and saying, "Hey, I'm willing to light myself on fire in the middle of Trans-Canada Highway. Yeah, will you do the same?"
Exactly.
In different ways. And people are amazing. I'll say it again. I'm dumbfounded by the level of support and love and trust that I've received over the last many years, and it only makes you want to get up and do more.
Exactly. And I think so many humans are looking for a cause that they can get behind, because not everybody's going to create one for themselves, but if they can get behind somebody else's cause and if they can get
Right.
a sparkle of hope, that lights them up. And so, just the fact that you are, number one, getting up to do this again, you went through the healing, you are healed, you're able to do it again. And that now you've, and I love that you've, that awareness too, and coming back to your North Star, but with this idea too that the petitions are just as powerful as the dollars is so amazing. So I think you're going to be giving, well, you've already given a gift to so many people. And I mean, there's so many aspects. There's so much more I can talk to you about. I just looked at the time, and I think it's like 10:13 in. Are you in Calgary?
You bet. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's
10:13
just
in
south of
Calgary.
Calgary in Okotoks. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Nice. Yeah, there's so much more that we could get into when it comes to rare diseases. But I know that, to wrap this up, that for everybody who's listening right now, get out your pens and sign that petition. Where can people find it, or is it up yet? Or
No, it's not up yet.
okay.
Petitions are really only available for, I think it's 90 days. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we would definitely need it driving during the run because that's when you get all the
Okay.
petitions.
Good.
So right now we're just having those conversations, making the right contacts, but all signs are pointing towards that. Rare
Amazing.
disease strategy petition in 2021 or 2022. But I don't think it can
Yeah.
wait.
No, I don't think so. And, right now, then, until that petition's ready, until, COVID eases up a bit and enables you to hit the pavement, then the other thing people can do as well, just a little tip here, is that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And
Mm,
so, having letters that people can write to government saying, we need this rare disease strategy, and then just telling their own personal stories. I mean, we wrote to every single MLA in our region in Canada, we in federal government when COVID hit, just advocating for small businesses, and we got
mm,
personalized responses back. That were, people had gone on our website, government officials had like dug into who we were and what we did, and they had really great responses. And then they came to our community and then they met with us and they said, okay, what do you need? Then we had a university come and say, okay, we want to study what it is you need. And
mm.
so it's amazing how you're going to generate so much awareness through this run, and you already have through the last run, but there are so many things that listeners out there, if you're hearing this, like I said, get out your pen. Okay, so wait for the petition, but write a letter to your local MLA and just demand that because we do need this. And your neighbor most likely has a child who has a rare disease.
Mm-hmm.
It could be you or a family member. So yeah, don't sit back and wait for Dave to have to do everything. You can help too in your own special way. So
Absolutely.
wow. How else can people get involved then between now and when you do leave?
Yeah, really, this is going to be a big communications effort.
Yeah.
So, like us on Facebook and Instagram. Dave Outruns Rare on Instagram. Um, Outrun Rare on Facebook. And just go to our website and really, ultimately, copy and paste and tell your friends about this, about and start a conversation amongst your friends about the needs for more rare disease support and access and research, and ask your friends, hey, do you have anybody in your life that's touched by rare disease?
Yeah.
And start that conversation, because you're going to be surprised of just how widespread it is.
Yeah.
And not only that, but not only widespread, but how many people are waiting in the queue, not getting the genetic testing that's necessary, being kind of passed by back forth here and there. And it might just be that they're not asking the right questions. But when I started asking all the right questions, when it came to the doctors and researchers, they just simply said the system isn't set up for people like you
Yeah.
when it comes to rare disease. And so rare is everywhere, and it's generally unsupported. So have that conversation with your neighbor, your coworker, and let's get this top of mind coming into 2021, 2022.
I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness. So we're going to have all the links in our show notes there. Oh, there's my little one running around behind. Clearly she escaped my husband's clutches for bedtime. Yeah, so we're going to have all the links in the show notes there. And so everybody can follow. We're going to be posting about everything that you're doing, which is amazing. And we're going to just do more on our end to raise awareness as well. So
thank you.
Yeah, so it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. As much as I want to keep you all to myself to ask you all about how do I do this run and cycle across Canada, I mean, we're going to have to jump onto another podcast because I wanted to ask you about fueling your body. I want to ask, there's so much more. And yeah, but I think this is a good place to wrap it up. What were you going to say?
Absolutely. Oh, let's definitely take this conversation offline, because I would love nothing more than to be one of, the people that you call or you reach out to of, oh, hey, what do I do about here? How do I, I would love to support you in any way that I can. I love the work that you're doing, and want to support it.
That's amazing, Dave. Thank you so much. I'm going to take you up on that 100%. And hopefully when I'm passing through Calgary, you can join me for, I don't know, 50K or more.
Absolutely. No doubt. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. That's wonderful. Thanks everyone for being here on the show.
Thank you.
Okay. Wonderful. Here we are back from that show. What did you think, folks? Was he not incredible? I just looked at his Strava feed. I'm on Strava. You can follow Dave on Strava, follow myself on Strava, so you can see how I'm training every day. And, just take note of the fact that one of his runs he just did the other day, he did 7 laps around the reservoir in Calgary. I think it was 101 or 103 kilometers in 4.5 hours. This guy can go. And so on that note, if you're somebody who thinks that, the conditions are not perfect right now in the world for running or exercising, maybe you're like us right now our town is covered in smoke because of the forest fires out of Oregon. People are losing their homes. People have died in these forest fires. And so I've complained about the smoke for sure, in light of the fact, not in light of the fact that, there are people whose lives are being traumatized right now as a result of these fires, but still, just because we have smoke in the community, it's not an excuse to not get out there and train. So go to your local gym where they're filtering the air. You can get on a treadmill, you can get on a bike, and you can still cycle and run and exercise and train. So don't use this as an excuse to not get out there and move your body. You can still do it in a safe way as well. And so just want to say, if you can go online to any of the organizations that are supporting the firefighters out there that are working so hard in all of these fires that are blazing through Western United States and Canada, please donate, whether it's, clothing, beds, bed fittings, furniture, whatever it is, to these families that have lost their entire lives, not their life, but their whole entire lives to these fires. Please go out there and do that now, because there's so many people in need of support. If you don't want to donate to the fires, then find an organization that you can support, whether it's volunteering and donating your time, your money, your resources of any kind. There's so many organizations out there that really rely on donations. So please go out there and do that. And of course, if you want to donate to our organization as well, 22 Million Strong, head over to the website, click on the donate button, because we could definitely use the support in being able to work with these Indigenous communities across Canada and youth and physicians to teach that food is medicine. So thanks everyone for being with us. It has been a pleasure. We'll see you next week on the Eat Real to Heal show.